Hello everyone, this is Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner and also infrequently known as Dr. Blackard, the subject of the video which you are about to watch. When Victoria and I first recorded the video you are about to see, What Makes Dr. Regis Blackgaard a Good Villain, I was searching for some sort of unifying statement about villainy that would sort of tie together the points that we brought, because I felt that we were lacking a coherent statement that kind of tied all of our points together. And then I happened to find one just before releasing this video. So even though Victoria and I aren't able to re-record the video, I wanted to give you this quote from this year's Super Bowl commercial from Jaguar about British villains. So I'll put the link down in the description, but I just wanted to read the dialogue to you to give a sense of the video to come. Have you ever noticed how in Hollywood movies all the villains are played by Brits? Maybe we just sound right. We're more focused, more precise. We are always one step ahead, with a certain style and an eye for detail, and we're obsessed by power. Stiff upper lip is key, and we all drive Jaguars. Oh yes, it's good to be bad. As I said, the link for the original video is down in the description, and with that, I will leave you with myself and Victoria. Hey everyone, this is Devin, aka Leonard Meltzner.
And this is Victoria.
And we are recording together again in the flesh.
Don't touch me.
So, we are back together. It is Christmas break now, once again. Yes, you can tell we recorded this awfully late. This was supposed to come out first week of December, I think.
Don't tell them
Here we are
that.
after Christmas now. They're going to know on the upload date. So here we are now, recording it together at last, which is the plus side to the episode being this late. And for the discussion of today, Victoria, the topic would be...
No, I'm kidding. There's nothing on my hand. What do we want in a villain for Dr. Regis Blackgaard?
Yes.
Blackard.
Blackard. Discussing
That's how they
what
say it.
makes him a good villain, because I think just about every Odyssean on the planet can agree Dr. Blackard is an amazing villain. Many would call him the best villain
in Odyssey.
Yes. So today we want to look at why, what characteristics are there that we want in a villain, how do they apply to Blackard, what is it about him that just makes us so enraptured
But
by
what
him.
it all boils down to at the core is that he has a British accent.
Because really that's what all villains boil down to in the end,
You
whether
will
they
be-
make it or break it.
You can be like a bad villain, like have some bad, horribly written things about you, but as long as you have a British accent, there's
You'll go
still
far,
that
kid.
sliver of respect that everyone like has a necessity to have to you. Just remember that.
So, let's get right into it. First off, what characteristics do we want in a villain? There are a lot of different types of villains in fiction, whether we're looking at science fiction or slice of life, modern day kind of comedies, whatever genre you would try and pigeonhole Odyssey into, assuming that were ever possible, or comic books or historical fiction or something.
Or Disney.
Yes, exactly. They're characteristic traits that across all sorts of different villains really seem to stick with people. We want villains which are
Dark, sneaky, conniving. They actually are smart and not stupid people who will ruin their whole plot after like 2 minutes, like the villains they have in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, we want villains which are dark right off the bat. If we want an icon of evil, then, you know, we want it to be evil. And that's not true for all villains, because, you know, we get really interesting moments out of villains who are not anti-heroes, but, you know, it's very gray whether or not they're actually evil per se, or whether, you know, they're trying to do good things and just have
Like
bad
Kaiba.
motives to it. or Dalton Kern. And that's one of my favorite things about Dalton Kern as a villain, is his role as Everett's pseudo-father, but that's another discussion for another day.
What about Richard?
Well, that's a whole nother ballpark too. Blackard is probably the darkest villain that Odyssey has ever had. He is an egomaniacal maniac.
Sociopath.
No.
I don't know what that means.
Solely for the sake of being that. He wants money, he wants power. There is some emotional revenge in it for him, but that isn't the instigating factor in his evil. Although it definitely does come into play, and that's another thing that we really like in villains like Blackard, is having family and a backstory, emotional depth, something that will hook our hearts to their character, like Loki, which is one of the reasons that he has so many fangirls. It's not just because he's played by Tom Hiddleston.
That's a big part.
It is a big part of it.
That is a big
yes,
part.
of course, but it is not the entire bit of it. Family and backstory and emotional conflict.
And his accent. That's also another big part of it.
Tie very strongly into what connects people to villains, and that backstory will often connect to the struggle of the hero that they are facing against. And while Blackard, as far as we know, doesn't have that initially with Wit, it certainly comes in later on because he keeps coming back specifically to try and get revenge on Wit for his earlier days. He has a lot of malice towards Wit in Applesauce because Wit bought him out as the Webster development firm for buying Wit's End. He blew up the tunnel, taking his own life specifically so that he could jab back at Wit's End. The excitement he got in Chicago over the thought of the fact that he was going to be able to destroy Wit in the process of taking this secret computer program.
He's very into having the last laugh.
Yes, he is. He's very subtle behind the scenes. He works through back channels and other companies' fronts and facades. Good villains never get their hands dirty unless they have to. And when they have to, they're willing to do whatever it takes. And Blackard is incredibly notorious, and Connie really points it out. That's one of his defining characteristics, in that he never lets the dirt on people's hands trace their fingerprints back to him. He has more loopholes than a spaghetti strainer, is how Connie put it in Waylaid in the Windy City. No matter what he does, he works through Richard, or he works through Glossman, he works through the RBG Foundation and Edgebiter, or he works through the Webster Development Firm, or Red Scorpion, or the European Union, or even the CIA itself. No, it wasn't in Waylaid. Was that just Department of Homeland Security? I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. He takes people, finds people, learns their weaknesses, manipulates it against them, uses his smooth talking, his silver tongue to weave people.
His voice that you love.
Yes, this amazing voice.
Chocolate.
That's another thing.
Melt all over your face, or however you so delicately.
Dark chocolate melting in your ears is the way I put it in the bloopers of our very first Oddcast episode. That's what
the way I put it. The way I said it when I was trying to remember what he said a couple days ago.
A voice that makes butter melt on your face.
No, I said on his face.
Oh yes, a voice that makes butter melt on his face. Which is not what I said. You can go back to episode 1.
It was close enough.
Listen to the bloopers.
It was close enough.
That is what Earl Bowen's voice is like, voicing Blackard, and that is another one of the wonderful things about Blackard, is his voice. But coming back to that, Blackard has an amazing way of learning people's weaknesses and manipulating them against them. He is incredible at, silver-tonguing his way to getting things, smooth-talking his way through peoples and politicians, and then manipulating them and blackmailing them in the end to get whatever he wants out of them, and then dumping them in the river when he's done with them, such as he did in Waylaid and in The End of a Name Not a Number. He's very well planned. One of the best things about Darkness Before Dawn, and something that I really wish could be captured properly in the Blackard Chronicles, is the sense of scale that Darkness Before Dawn gives. Because when you listen to Darkness Before Dawn, you're listening to episodes, just the episodes which are relevant to the Blackard saga. After Waylaid, you're going to hear, like, Wrathbone of Content. I don't know what the exact episodes are, but the episodes that would be relevant would be like Wrathbone of Contention, Double Trouble, Code of Honor, Tom for Mayor Part 1 and 2, Name Not Number Part 1 and 2.
One Bad Apple.
Yeah, One Bad Apple. Even things like
even though
the Underground Railroad Parts 1, 2, and 3 is relevant to it. And the point is, when you listen to it all together, you're like, okay, here, yeah, I see the connections between these things. And then boom, here's Blackard and Darkness Before Dawn. But when you listen to those episodes in the context of everything else, they are enormously spread out over the canon of Odyssey.
Like,
it is
all the way from album 5, or
well,
album
from Recollections,
1,
yeah.
all the way from album 1 to album 25.
There's things which are spread out, and they're so subtle. Actually, listening to Darkness Before Dawn the first time, I picked up on all of the little connections that came together to show that Blackard actually owned the Electric Palace. And I ended up being right about how those things wove together. But, you know, it's incredible how long the Odyssey team wove all of these little pieces together.
How many years would that been?
Darkness Before Dawn came out in 95, I think. So, like, 8 years.
So a year after you were born.
So, like, 7 years-ish.
That is
I mean,
pretty
obviously
impressive.
they weren't pre-planning that all
They
from the beginning.
pulled a Moffat, everyone, and you have to
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Not all those things were put in that place specifically to fit in there, but they did make everything from that long ago fit in together into a very... It's not just like, this means Blackard owns the Electric Palace. It was like, Blackard said he tried to build, or to buy Wits End a long time ago, but Wit bought him out, which means he owned the Webster Development Firm based on Recollections, which means that when Bart said that the Webster Development Firm was building the Electric Palace, that Blackard was the one who was really building it. So when the Electric Palace and Bart as owner was behind all these things happening in Darkness Before Dawn, it was really Blackard who was doing it. Alternatively, in Waylaid in the Windy City, Blackard said he was thinking of opening an electronics store in Odyssey soon with, and I quote, every conceivable electronic device for every conceivable need, which is almost word for word the exact same thing Bart said only a very short amount of episodes later about the electronics store he was opening in Odyssey, coincidentally on the same property where Blackard's palace was built.
And
So-
also there's the connections between the names, which Devin first pointed out to me when you explained this to me, because I never picked up on it.
Eugene pointed it out.
Yeah, so you go from a castle to a palace.
Yes, Eugene points that out in A Wrathbone
Mind blown.
of
You
Contention.
didn't realize that.
Unless you've listened to Wrathbone of Contention, in which case you heard it when Eugene said it.
But if you haven't.
Yeah, so needless to say, Blackard is extremely
Diligent.
intellectual and incredibly forethinking when it comes to planting all these little seeds years before to set up his plans. He brings emotional depth and motive to the character, having Edwin there and having that dynamic between them, even for such a short time in Darkness Before Dawn, where we get to, you know, realize Blackard does have a family. He has a brother. He used to, you know, have a relationship with his brother. He even wrote to his brother in When Bad Isn't So Good, even if, you know, it was out of jeering and spite still. And
Also
we hear them talk about their mom and stuff like that. Even if it's not a lot of stuff, it builds background to a character, which is something you really want in a villain, to be able to connect with them and understand them. And that's a lot more of a background than we get for another villain like, say, Mr. Charles, who is just a giant black question mark of death.
He's an evil Wooten, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Icbodia.
For people who don't get the whole evil Wooten thing, they are both played by Jess Harnell.
Yeah.
Which is quite surprising.
So, other things, Victoria, do you want to go over?
He doesn't die at all. He's like the master in Doctor Who, which is funny because they look the same.
Or
We talked
Xehanort
about
in
this.
Kingdom Hearts.
Yes, but Xehanort has an army of himself. Anyway, so he doesn't stay dead. What happens is they think he died in album 5 because he disappeared, but then they realize, no, he's just escaped, and then they find him in Chicago. Oh, he's disappeared again, they know he's somewhere else, and then in 25, he dies in the tunnel.
Well, in 22, they think he dies again. The whole European government thinks that he dies.
And then he randomly appears again. Even Jason is shocked in 25. He dies in the tunnel along with Jack, who does not die.
For realsies this time. And then he still comes back as a computer program, which he preemptively planted in the imagination
And
station.
then the episode I hate comes along that we won't talk about because I hate it so much.
We're not talking about Blackard's appearance in I Slap Floor since he technically didn't appear there, so it doesn't count as a canon characterization of his character.
That episode is horrible. The only upside is they have Richard in
I
it.
like I Slap Floor personally.
He
Victoria
likes
doesn't.
It.
I don't love the
detest
episode, but I don't hate it. Yes, Blackard is very good at not dying, and the biggest part of that is the fact that even when he still died, for real, that he still didn't die in that, you know, he had already planted a computer program to resurrect himself in the imagination station. Which is a very Xehanort kind of thing to do.
Yeah, it is. That might have been just a kind of, like, just trying to bring him back for a couple more episodes thing. To do another lesson, like,
yeah, but it still says something incredible about his character.
Yeah, that's what some people think. I think they're kind of,
I mean, I know,
like, I can see where they're coming from, except for I really like that episode, and I think it was pretty clever of him to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just another way he can get under Wit's skin, kind of.
Blackard is...
Literally, since he almost turns into it at the end.
That's true. Blackard is a great half-truther, and this definitely fits into how silver-tongued he is. He is incredible at manipulating the truth to still basically be the truth. The biggest example of this is in Blackard's Revenge, where he's talking to Aubrey, and she asks him about the accusations that the Wit's End crew made against him, and he is able to truthfully ward off, to her satisfaction, every question that she puts against him. Because he didn't burn down Tom Riley's barn, of course. A thug named Richard Maxwell did it, who then viciously attacked his own Blackard's palace. He didn't destroy the computer program in Chicago. It was Wit who did it, and Blackard was working with the government at the time, etc., etc. And that basically covers over all of the personality characteristics. As far as appearance goes, I think the biggest detractor in a villain is when you try and give them a corny theme, some kind of thematic personality, weapon type,
like the Whisperer,
or costume design. Yeah, the Whisperer, and basically almost any comic book villain. I mean, usually an iconic comic book such as Superman or Batman, Spider-Man, etc. The Marvel comics will have, you know, the mainest villains, which are just straight up, you know, they don't need any kind of gimmick to be a good villain, and they have enough backstory they can stand on their own. But usually you get these one-shot villains thrown in who just, you know, ooh, he's the ice guy, or the sand guy, or the number guy, or things like this.
Even with lots of mean Superman, Batman villains, they do have themes, like Joker's
the Penguin.
themed.
The Penguin, and of course the Whisperer was based on the Penguin.
He was? Oh, that makes so much sense. Like the monocle and the cane and... that makes so much sense! I don't know how I didn't notice that.
Yes. So, that's the thing, you know. For appearance, you want it to go with the personality. You want them to be dark, subtle, but still have like this very fashionable, old-fashioned, suave kind of thing. Like, you know, Blackard has a cloak and a cane. It's very old-fashioned and dapper, but it's very cool and mysterious and proper British gentleman, which is how most good villains usually are. And of course, all this isn't to say that if a villain doesn't fit into these characteristics that makes them bad. There are plenty of amazing villains that don't fit into any of these things. You know, we have the Joker, for example, who is very loud and over the top and not at all British or dapper in any way.
Even though he's like super themed and stuff and everything is like kind of circusy around him, he is still a very good villain.
So
with a very mysterious
villains don't have to
backstory.
fit into these, but I'm just saying these are characteristics that can often help to build a very good villain. Appearance, hair usually, and it goes with that elderly distinguished thing in the title Doctor, which is very common with comic book supervillains. You know, Doc Ock, or Doctor Doom, or
every other Doctor there is. I
basically,
can't think of any more.
yes, except for the Doctor.
Yes, the
Usually.
doctor.
Depends on your
the
perspective.
Doctor, I can't
Yeah.
talk.
He
I sound like a
is-
Dalek when I say it like that.
I thought you were trying to.
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I just can't talk right now.
He is the oncoming storm. I mean, from your perspective, he could be a supervillain, you know, the Valiard, the Beast, the Trickster, the Goblin, who would drop down onto your sky one day and devour your planet.
He's
But
kind of both to me.
that is neither here nor there.
Anyway.
So, to wrap this up, we want to look over Blackard's appearances throughout Odyssey and how they're handled and what his strong points are throughout each instance in which he has come. What are the things about each appearance that have made him strong as a villain? For his first appearance, Applesauce Saga, Album 5, of course, you want to make a strong entrance when you're introducing yourself as a villain. So, when he first shows up, he comes not as a villain, but as a businessman, and he is being evil, and we see that pretty quickly, but he isn't overzealously evil. He looks more like a corrupt businessman who's willing to do a lot more than he should to try and get his business into place. And slowly he reveals his stakes are higher and higher and higher until you realize just how serious the situation is. In Waylaid in the Windy City, he's brought corrupted government agents around to his side in order to cover his own trail. And to the point that when everything is said and done, they aren't able to stick legal charges on him for anything that he's done. Throughout his entire reign, it wasn't until Darkness Before Dawn that they were able to get any legal charges to stick to him. And that's part of that whole, you know, working through back channels and other facades and other people, never getting your hands dirty. If he has to, he is willing to murder someone in cold blood, which he does in Waylaid and in Name No Number. Technically, he doesn't do it himself. He always tells someone else to do it, but that's the closest he comes to the situation. Most of the times, he'll own other companies through which he'll work his little, you know, Machiavellian schemes, and that's how he avoids anything tracing back to him. And in Waylaid, he began laying one of the two subtle clue trails mentioned earlier, connecting him to the Electric Palace. Wrathbone of Contention, he planned out his presence in Odyssey way before Darkness Before Dawn, using the Webster development firm, showing the incredible amount of foresight that he has. In Double Trouble, it's noted that he's gaining international acclaim as a computer consultant and programmer, and creating good reputation and alibis everywhere he goes. So if someone tries to trace crimes back to him, he is always in the headlines wherever he goes, proving he wasn't here or he wasn't there, because he's having his henchmen get his henchmen get his henchmen, getting this company to get their henchmen to carry out his work.
And then he kills some people in between so it can never be followed.
Exactly. Tom Vermeer, he began sowing even more seeds for Darkness Before Dawn, trying to weave himself into Odyssey's political structure to prepare for what was coming. He exploited the Edgebiter scandal, and this is likely when he bought Edgebiter using the RBG Foundation around this time. I should mention, it's never explicitly stated in Odyssey, but I definitely believe that Blackard did own the RBG Foundation, because the fact that the company, which happened to own Edgebiter, donated to Tom's campaign and not Bart's would be an incredible coincidence and a wonderful break for Blackard otherwise. And the fact that if you break his 15-letter name down into 3 chunks, Regis Blackgaard, you get RBG. So, yeah. In Name Not a Number, he went undercover as a Swiss grandfather buying toys for a radical terrorist organization, where he was in turn undercover for a European security agency, where he was in turn undercover for himself. So, you know, he's always working his ruses through everything else, trying to cover up his tracks, manipulating absolutely everybody. He betrayed everyone to steal an incredibly deadly supervirus capable of holding entire nations hostage, and murdered the leader of a major terrorist organization. Like I said, in cold blood, almost.
At least that organization won't be killing anyone else.
That's true. In Darkness Before Dawn, he laid the foundations for his return in Blackard's Revenge with extreme caution and subtlety in an absolutely ingenious way, working through countless fronts and associates and back channels to weave his presence back into the town in multiple different areas without anyone even knowing he'd returned yet, until he was already here.
He's already there.
He is always already here. And he was willing to sacrifice his life simply in order to get a jab back at wit's end. And finally, in Blackard's revenge, he showed his incredible one-step aheadedness in the fact that before he died, he digitized a copy of his brain, implanted it as a virus in the Imagination Station as a failsafe in case he died, which he did.
It's a good thing that the Imagination Station didn't blow up then, or else that would have been completely destroyed. They'd been like, ah, snap, I knew I should have hidden it somewhere else.
The plan came incredibly close to succeeding too, and if it wasn't for Rick's last-minute ruse, Blackard, and assuming that the neural transfer actually would have worked on Aubrey without killing her or seriously damaging her brain, Blackard could have actually sort of come back to life.
Yeah, but he would have
been
like
vague kind of way.
Teenage girl. And yeah, I always thought about that, like, while listening to it, even when I was little the first time, I was thinking, like, okay, you want to turn into a teenage girl so you can do what you were doing before, like, take over things. And I'm thinking, like, how is that going to work for you? Like, you're going to walk around and be like, Dr. Regis Blackgaard! And people are going to be like, what is she doing?
A female Artemis Fowl, I guess.
And evil.
Artemis Fowl's a bad guy.
Oh, I thought that.
Well, he was an anti-hero.
Yeah, but then he'd definitely be evil.
Well, yeah, but he was a criminal.
Oh.
Anyways, so I think that's about all of the discussion that we have. So to sum it up, what does Blackard have that we want in a villain? He is dark, subtle,
British,
deep voice, smooth talking, silver-tongued, very well planned, behind the scenes, pulling strings, intellectual, has family and personal conflict, emotional depth and motive.
And he is very good at twisting the truth and has a silver tongue.
Not afraid, not afraid to do whatever it takes.
He blackmails people, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty through other people.
He doesn't dress too brightly or flashily, doesn't need a thematic personality to draw people in.
He's resourceful.
Very suave, very good at wrapping people around his finger and then snapping them into little bits and crumbling them into his drink.
And he's very good at always getting the last laugh unless Whit's around.
Yes.
Or Jason.
So, I think that's all about all that we have to say about Dr. Regis Blackgaard.
Oh, also about murdering people in cold blood, he almost had that done with Richard in 25.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, he has had it done with a lot of people, and yes, Richard was almost among them. Very close, except Jellyfish is rather incompetent as an assassin.
Yeah, I'm glad that Richard isn't gone. Richard's one of my favorite characters.
So hopefully that was somewhat coherent as an argument. I mean, we were making this more of a discussion as opposed to an argument, as we have structured more towards for the first two discussions that we've done, but hopefully we've given you some food for thought and not just putting you to sleep on this lovely evening, morning or afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching this.
And sorry that I've yawned like 4 times.
Yeah, good job, Victoria.
Thanks.
So, next week, we are going to be reviewing A Christmas Conundrum, which is among my very favorite Odyssey episodes of all time. We are gearing up for the Christmas episodes we're doing, even though for us Christmas is already over, cough, 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 but forget all of that. We're only reviewing the 1 episode next week because we will be reviewing a 3-parter the 2 weeks after that for our next review. So it balances out, just like we did when we were doing album 57. Since that is supposed to be the week of Christmas, I'm sure you can guess which 3-parter it is.
And if you can't, shame on you and leave the fandom right now.
Obviously, it's a perfect witness. So, I think that's all we have to say for now. Would you agree?
Indeed, I would.
In that case, this has been Victoria.
And this has been Devin.
And thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube.
And this has been, we could say it at the same time,
The Adventures in Odyssey
Oddcast.
Oddcast.
Hey! Why would you do something like that?
Bye!
Bye!